How's it going, YouTube? My name is Tristan. Welcome back to L-Space Books. L-Space, of course, is the dimension that is created from space and time being distorted by too many books accumulating in one spot. Of course, that's from Terry Pratchett's Discworld. I think that particular description is from Guards. It's a fantastic book. But anyway, that's where the channel name comes from. If you haven't seen my where to start or like how to read Discworld video, that's definitely that's where I explain it, and I haven't done that in a while. But anyway, this is kind of a rambly video. I feel like a lot of my videos are fairly rambly. They're not. None of my videos are scripted, but I just wanted to come on and just film something, I guess, fairly quickly. First of all, I wanted to say thank you so much for everyone that has been super supportive of me and doing my thesis, because that has been a very long project, as I think people who have done grad school can definitely know. I'm doing my master's in French literature, for those who don't know, and I'm working on just kind of finalizing the last little bit of edits before I submit it to the grad school, and that hopefully means that I get my diploma in September, which would be fantastic. Because then really all that's doing is that making it so that on my CV or my resume I can put has a master's degree instead of master's degree expected fall, summer 2024, etc. So anyway, I'm super grateful for everybody who's been really supportive, who've given me wishes of good luck or said congratulations when I defended and succeeded. But yeah, it just means a lot, especially because for the most part, we're more or less strangers. Aside from interacting on each other's videos, I think a lot of us, we really don't know that much about each other. But anyway, very grateful. Thank you very much for your support and your words of encouragement. It means a lot. But that's also why I have been kind of, I guess, sort of tepid on some of my content. When I started this channel, I really wanted to do more deep dives into books, more in-depth book reviews, and things like that. Books that, or, videos that require a little bit more scripting and planning, and I just haven't had time to do that. And I think that's fine. I work outside the home. I work as a preschool teacher, and then when I come home, I try to read if I can, or I try to work on my thesis. And so that's just a lot of I guess all of the time that I would be sitting down to write something for YouTube is time that I should be spending on my thesis, and so therefore I do try to prioritize accordingly. But that being said, I do plan on coming out with some more deep dive videos, ones that I've hinted at or like talked about in previous videos, especially ones like a book on In Memoriam by Alice Wynne. Did I say a video about In Memoriam by Alice Wynne. And I definitely want to do some more deep dives on the Booker long list, because that is very much what I'm excited about this as the season progresses, as well as some of the books that I'm reading for Women in Translation Month. I definitely want to talk more about those because I am reading some pretty good things. But today, I would actually like to talk about 3 historical fiction books that I've read or listened to on audiobook. Through my library, I'm using the Libby app to do audiobooks. And these 3 historical fiction books really did something for me, and I'm very excited about them. One in particular, and that's the one that I'm going to talk about last, and I am just buzzing about all 3 of these. Okay, so the first one I want to talk about is House of Names by Colm Toibin, and that is how you pronounce his name, Colm Toibin. Maybe it could also be Toibin, but that's how they pronounce it on the audiobooks, so that is how I'm going to also pronounce it. So this is one that I discovered watching Louise Savage Muses, whose channel I adore. I have found that I really vibe with not only her reading taste, but also her sons, Simon Savage from Simon Savage Reads, I believe his name is, his channel name. But anyway, both of their content is simply phenomenal, and I really, really, really like the books that they talk about, and I think that both of them have a very unique and also refined taste in literature that I very much... Thanks, Douglas. The cats are playing, hence the crash into the tripod. Let's reposition this. Okay, so anyway, I really like their taste in books and the books that they talk about. TLDR. So one of them, of course, was House of Names by Colm Toibin. And this is kind of one of the earlier mythological retellings. I'm calling it historical fiction more so than, say, a mythological retelling, because while it deals with the myth of Clytemnestra, Agamemnon, and Orestes, it doesn't really, and Iphigenia, and it doesn't really, it basically takes everything mythological out. It completely removes the gods from the myth, which I think is fascinating. It basically is kind of, it starts off with a meditation, or I guess more of like a monologue from Clytemnestra and her sort of railing at the gods for allowing the sacrifice of her daughter. And then obviously like things progress and Orestes becomes the main character, Hi Wally, and things just kind of go from there. And it becomes so interesting. Electra becomes a really cool character toward the end of the book, and just the entire vibe of the book was just really cool. I'm a big fan of Toibin's writing. I read The Magician, which is a novelization of the life of Thomas Mann, the author, and I thought that one was phenomenal. I would love to reread that and talk about it again, because there's a lot to talk about in that book that's just so good. So he is definitely a top tier author for me. I really, really like his writing and the way that he worked with this particular myth. And again, I really liked the humanization of it, and I guess, like, when I say humanization, I mean the fact that it is a humanistic retelling of the myth, one that is completely mundane without any of the gods or fantasy element of the myth. And I think that was a very fascinating way to go about it. I think with the myths, the actual myths, you end up kind of seeing the fates of mortals being kind of the gods' idle playthings, whereas this one is a completely human story. And also the fact that it kind of takes place from the perspective of somebody living in the time, and Clytemnestra especially being more kind of an atheist, agnostic / like anti-theist, and I just really liked that whole thing narratively. I think that worked really well for me. So anyway, I wanted to talk about that because I was very captivated by that one. The next one is also going to be set in the ancient world, because I also read Glorious Exploits by Ferdia Lennon. And let me tell you about this book. So this is all about two Syracusan soldiers, or like Syracusans. I actually don't think they're soldiers. They're potters. The two Syracusan potters who want to put on a production of Medea. And the way they want to do that is with a bunch of imprisoned Athenians who are imprisoned in a quarry, and because they memorized Medea, and so they need people who know the play to act it out. And what was particularly striking about this, well, there's two things that were particularly striking. So again, I read this on audiobook, and Ferdia Lennon is the narrator for this one, and he did a fantastic job. Really, really fun to listen to him read his own work. I loved the fact that it just blatantly uses modern slang. There is, I won't spoil exactly the pun, but I won't spoil the exactly like the context of this, but just know that Crocs are in the book. One of the characters wears Crocs, and I'm not going to talk about that anymore. I'm going to let you read it and find out, and it's hilarious. So, and then just like things like that, where he uses blatant Irish slang and dialect and all of that, but obviously it's retelling a story that takes place in the ancient world. And as somebody who's also toyed with the idea of writing a story set in kind of the ancient world, the idea of dialogue is very daunting, because you want, when you have these two, especially compared to each other with Toibin's and then Lennon's, Toibin's is more authentic. It feels more like a dialogue that what we would expect somebody from that period to have, whereas Lennon's is just unabashedly and blatantly modern, contemporary, and not at all classical whatsoever. And I really liked that approach. I think that it worked well. It brought the characters to life, and it made them seem so much more relatable, because they were using the same kind of language that we encounter on a day-to-day basis, and I thought that that worked really well. And so that was one of the things that I really liked. The other one that I really liked was the fact that it's all about art bridging the gaps between cultures, peoples, sides of political struggles. Because you have the Athenians who were attempting to conquer Syracuse, and then you have the Syracusans who defeated the Athenians and then imprisoned all of the Athenian soldiers. And through this play, the production of the play, the Syracusans and the Athenians eventually see the humanity in each other and begin to form a bond that is a healing bond, one that is beginning to right some of the wrongs brought about through this conflict, this war. And I love that. Huge fan of art being used as a piece, being used as resistance to oppression. I love it as a way of bridging the gap between, obviously, conflicting cultures, etc. And it's just a really, really wonderful book. It's funny. It's cool. The way that the writing is fantastic. The only thing that I will say is that the US cover, I hate. It makes sense, like the googly eyes on top of the classical like bust, that it makes sense for what the book is. I'll give it that. But I much prefer the UK cover, even though there is a shocking lack of pottery, despite the fact that these two are professional potters. So that was a little weird. But anyway, hi Douglas. Yes, it's almost dinner time, so the cats are hungry. Okay, so the last one that I want to talk about is one that I think I just randomly came across it. I read the description and thought, wow, that sounds really good. And then I listened to it, and I was absolutely blown away. When I say that this came out of left field and completely overtook me and just took me over by surprise, that is not even slightly an exaggeration. I was absolutely hooked to this book. And that was You Dreamed of Empires by Alvaro Enrigue, and translated by Natasha Wimmer. I did not read this in Spanish. Would have been cool if I did, but I did not. Now, this book, I'm going to read the synopsis for you because there's a lot of it, and I want to make sure that I'm giving you the exact, all of the details here. One morning in 1519, Conquistador Hernan Cortés entered the city of Tenochtitlan, today's Mexico City. Later that day, he would meet the Emperor Moctezuma in a collision of two worlds, two empires, two languages, two possible futures. Cortés was accompanied by his 9 captains, his troops, and his 2 translators, Friar Aguilar, a taciturn former slave, and Malinali, a strategic former princess. Greeted at a ceremonial welcome meal by the steely princess Atotoshli, sister and wife to Moctezuma, the Spanish nearly bungle their entrance to the city. As they await their meeting with Moctezuma, who is at a political, spiritual, and physical crossroads, and relies on hallucinogens to get himself through the day, and in quest for any kind of answer from the gods, the Spanish are ensconced in the labyrinthian palace. Soon, one of Cortez's captains, Jasmin Caldera, overwhelmed by the grandeur of the city, begins to question the ease with which they were welcomed into the city, and wonders at the risks of getting out alive, much less conquering the empire. So, this book is obviously basically counting or reimagining the meeting of Moctezuma, Emperor Moctezuma, and the conquistadors with Hernan Cortez. So this reimagines the history of the Aztec capital, Moctezuma's court, all of the people involved in the palace life, as well as people living in the city of Tenochtitlan. And this book is just so evocatively written. It reads like fantasy. I will just say that. The author sprinkles a couple of essays throughout the book to give a true historical explanation of some of the things that are happening in the book, as well as basically it's kind of an essay describing exactly what Tenochtitlan looked like, as well as what some of the architectural decisions mean from a cultural or mythic standpoint, religious standpoint. He also, and keep in mind, I listened to this on audiobook, and the narrator is beyond fantastic. He gives a nice note about pronunciation, and listening to it as an audiobook is really, I think, actually the way to go, because you do get to hear how all of these names were pronounced, because it's not easy. Like, Aztec is, or well, Nawa is not exactly an easy language to read and know how to pronounce when you've never encountered it before. And that was one of the things that the sort of introduction or preface talked about, was the fact that even people living in Mexico, the language is still something that they're going to be encountering for the first time. And so you don't have to feel particularly intimidated by it, because you're also encountering it for the first time. It's a very intimate look at the lives of each of the characters. Moctezuma, I think in in the United States, when he's portrayed in history, is, kind of a lazy guy who maybe was a little bit too hedonistic and didn't really, and, that it was an easy conquest for Cortez. And so to see Moctezuma brought to life and also recontextualized was, for me, really impactful. And to see it done in such a way that, in such a vibrant and just incredible way, I've been thinking about this book constantly since I listened to it, and just, it is so good. I'm absolutely going to be buying this book in the physical format as well as the audiobook, to be honest, because, like I said, the narrator is one of the best narrators I've ever encountered. So I really just need to talk about this one because it's just so good. I want to listen to it again. It's not too long, which is another great thing. I listened to the entirety of the book on 2 bike rides, and just the amount of color and attention to detail on the culture and the society and the history and everything, just, it blew my mind, is what I am trying to get across here. I'm a little bit at a loss for words. I'm just kind of vomiting praise for this book, but it deserves it. It really, really deserves it, because I just am kind of obsessed with it. It is going in my top 10 books of the year. Absolutely. The only reason why it wasn't in my top 10 books of the year so far was because I read it in July, not in June. But seriously, you have to read this book. It is completely life-changing as far as a historical fiction book goes. I just I need people to read it so more people can talk about it, because I want to have more of a discussion about this one, because it's just so good. And the ending was so good. Chef's kiss. So yeah, that was You Dreamed of Empires by Alvaro Enrigue. And yeah, you just need to read it. And I hope you do. And I hope you comment about it or talk about it in a video of your own. And so anyway, those are 3 audiobooks that I recently read, historical fiction, mind you, that were really quite surprising, ones that kind of took me by surprise and really led me down some cool imaginative paths. Hopefully they sound worth your time, and that this video is also worth your time, of course. Um, I mean, if you've made it this far, it goes without saying. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let me know if you have read any of these books or if you plan to read any of these books in the comment section down below, because especially the last one, especially You Dreamed of Empires, I really need more people to read that one. Or listen to it. Definitely listen to it. It's a fantastic audiobook. All right, anyway, that's all I have for you today. I am going to be back very soon with another video, and definitely more in-depth content now that my thesis project is wrapping up and ramping down, which is great. But for the time being, I wish you very well. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and I will hopefully see you very soon with another video. Bye!